So just last week during the Game Awards, we saw the announcement of The Outer Worlds, the new and upcoming game by Obsidian Entertainment, the developers of Fallout New Vegas. This announcement came at a seemingly amazing time. Bethesda's Fallout 76 was having numerous controversies and troubles, and a lot of people, even just independent of this, were calling for Obsidian to make another Fallout game, or even a remaster of Fallout New Vegas, their original creation. So naturally, as a developer of what many would call the best Fallout game ever, go on to make their own RPG, a lot of people assumed the two would be very similar, with many outlets going as far to call this Fallout New Vegas 2.0, or even that in light of Fallout 76, The Outer Worlds is the Fallout game we've all been waiting for. And honestly, I don't really agree with that. I think it was really easy to come to these conclusions, especially watching the trailer, watching some of those initial interviews as we got that first info dump. But with some of these follow-up interviews, looking at some of the additional information that has come out, there's distinctive differences between this game and Fallout New Vegas or even Fallout 76, and I think it's going to be really important for you as a fan of these two games to keep that in mind. This isn't really meant to be a video to talk down or badly about The Outer Worlds, but just to keep people's expectations in check, because I think there's actually a lot of misconceptions around the everyday user when looking at this. Most people saw the original trailer, they saw the developer, and they thought they knew exactly what they were getting, and in this video I'm going to explain to you why that really isn't the whole story. So first and foremost, one of the particularly important components to keep in mind with this is that The Outer Worlds are being published by Private Division. This is a new subsidiary of Take-Two, the Take-Two that owns 2K and Rockstar. Although don't fret, they have confirmed no microtransactions in The Outer Worlds. But either way, Private Division isn't like your normal publisher. This is actually meant to be a medium budget or otherwise known as AA publisher. A lot of games nowadays are high budget games, such as Fallout 76, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4. Those were all AAA games. The Outer Worlds isn't that. The Outer Worlds is notably a AA game. When you look at Fallout 76, it's immediately obvious that a game being AAA doesn't automatically mean it's going to be good, but this does indicate somewhat the scale and the support of The Outer Worlds. We already know that Obsidian is a studio on the smaller side with roughly 170 employees, and even beyond that, the development time of this game is looking to be around 2.5 years. So none of that information in and of itself is necessarily a bad thing, it's just important factors to keep in mind. But at least one byproduct that has come of this is no mod support. That of course being a major component of Fallout New Vegas, and mod support has been shut down pretty hard considering they didn't even say, oh, maybe it'll come down the line. They said maybe it'll come for the sequel, like maybe it's a potential when The Outer Worlds 2 is developed. Either way, moving on, the other pretty big component that is going to be different in this game is The Outer Worlds isn't an open world game. I would actually say this is probably one of the biggest things that people are confusing with The Outer Worlds and Fallout games. As of right now, we know that The Outer Worlds is going to have two different planets. One of them is colonized, one of them is not colonized, and they're described as not open worlds, but rather compartmentalized, each having various areas that you can explore, but it's not like you can go anywhere at any time. Obsidian explicitly saying, while we aren't discussing the exact amount of areas, a good bit of context for the approach is to think of what we did in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. And they go on to say that the scale of this is going to be very different than what it was in Fallout New Vegas. So if you're expecting that, you're going to probably be at least somewhat disappointed. I think this is a really important point to highlight, especially when comparing it to Fallout New Vegas. One of the really cool aspects about that game was how you could go wherever you wanted, whenever, and you could actually interact with the NPCs however you wanted, whether it be talking, sneaking around them, or even just outright taking them down immediately. It seems like in The Outer Worlds, it's not going to have the first half of that segment. It's only going to have the second half. All in all, when going into this game, I would expect a much smaller game, a shorter game, not something the same length of Fallout New Vegas and not having those open world aspects. But that's really not a bad thing. Some of the features that are being carried over from Fallout are things like the perk system and the skill system. But in many ways, I feel like they actually improved on this, making companions more integrated into the story, adding in this new flaw system, so you have true choices. And speaking of choice, that's arguably not one of the best features in Fallout New Vegas, but the best feature in Fallout New Vegas. The degree of choice and decision making you do have, And the developers of this game have explicitly said that if people have liked our previous RPGs, they're going to like this one in terms of how we make reactive worlds and especially our style of humor. Going into the Outer Worlds, I would expect a shorter game that has way more replayability than you're probably used to. Looking at all the different build paths you could take, looking at how much you could customize your character and interact with the world around you in new and unique ways seems like it's going to be a game that almost everyone wants to play more than once. So for me, that sounds really good. I'm super excited for this game. I think it very easily could be my game of the year, although with Metro and likely Cyberpunk, there's going to be a lot of competition. And really the reason I wanted to make this video, just to be totally clear, is not to try and downplay or talk badly about this game, but to make it clear to you, my mostly Fallout fan audience, what this is and what this isn't. But before we end things off, I do want to share today's psychology fun fact of the day. And that's going to be on two forms of coping with stress and some of the most popular ways of coping with stress for Americans. So coping with stress is really divided into two larger categories. That with problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. Problem-focused coping is like taking the head-on approach. Like let's say you are super stressed about having a test, rather than trying to deal with that or cope with the stress emotionally, you just actually start studying for the test and spend a really long time studying for the test and then do well on the test, and thus you don't have any more stress around it. It is considered the most effective way of coping because you actually remove the problem. Let's say somebody is stressed about their weight and appearance, they go to the gym every day and then remove that stressor altogether, so it's largely resolved. But what about instances where you can't heavily impact the stressor, where you actually can't just make it go away? Well, that's where employing emotion-focused coping typically is a lot better. Basically, this is going to be trying to actually reduce or minimize the stressful effects of that stressor. You attempt to reduce your negative emotional response as a result of it. Like let's say you bomb your test, you didn't study enough beforehand and it's not really something you could change, you can't go back in time and improve that grade. You might talk with others to try and reduce the anxiety you're feeling, you might drink, you might take some other kind of chemical substance. And a lot of times this isn't seen as ideal because you're not really taking away the core problem, you're just almost trying to numb yourself to it. But in certain scenarios, it certainly can be the better solution. But it seems like overall, people actually tend to cope with stress more through the emotion-focused route. The three most popular ways to cope with stress in the US are either listening to music, exercising, or reading. Many of the actual stress sources being micro-stressors like traffic, their job, maybe their income. But either way, yeah, hopefully you guys found this video informative. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I'm actually moving as you're watching this, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.